All right. Today we're going to be talking about how to recession-proof your business or how to save a struggling small business. My name is Ken Fainer, and my company is The Social Glue. And I would just like to tell you a little bit about myself. I'm married. I have a daughter. She's about to graduate from Georgia Tech in December. Very excited to get her off the payroll. I love rock and roll, and you can see a picture there of me in college at Georgia Southern. I was working at the college radio station. I always had a love of music. The college radio station just expanded that, and for 30 some odd years, I worked in the music industry. 15 of those years, I had my own successful advertising agency working with exclusively the record labels. And here's a picture of me from those good old college days. Currently, I run a company. It's my company called The Social Glue, and we do email marketing and social media for our clients. We create newsletters that get opened, social media that sticks, and we help businesses stay organized. And our business is to help businesses thrive. Our mission is to help businesses thrive. So before we jump into the presentation, I want to show this video. And I think a lot of small business owners will be able to identify with this video big time. The video is from a company called Keep, and I have been using their product now for about 2 months. And it has really helped me stay organized and stay on top of potential leads for my business. I've already closed. I have 9 or 11 people in my lead funnel right now, and I've already closed 4 of them.
Hey, checking in. How's your business going?
Yeah, Tom, I have it with me right here.
Hey, the kids want to know when you'll be home.
I'm really sorry.
Hey, listen, maybe owning a business is too much to handle right now.
You gave up a steady paycheck to chase this dream. Maybe it's not worth it.
Do you have any idea how hard it is these days to find new clients?
What do you know about managing people?
It's great you took the risk, but it's time to admit it's not working.
Sorry, girl, I gotta take your dough.
I know you're passionate about this.
I know you gave it your best shot, but maybe it's time.
Maybe it's time.
Maybe it's time to get a real job.
All right. I really like that video. It kind of capsulizes really in a nutshell what small businesses deal with. You try to stay organized as best you can, but things seem to get out of control. Setting up meetings, things like that, seems like that's a lot of what you do. Keep has a great way where you basically send your client your calendar, and they can look and see what times you have available and schedule the times with you. I just did that the other day for a meeting this morning, a phone call this morning, and the person picked the time that they wanted me to call them, and I did. And that's the wonderful thing about Keep. It'll really get you organized. It makes setting up meetings a snap. Also, it has some things built into it. You know, sometimes a good billing system is difficult. Well, Keep has a way of putting in. You can put in your data for building proposals, and you can put in your pricing, You can build a proposal in just a matter of a few minutes, email it off to the person. If they accept your proposal, you can then just turn around, click, turn that into an invoice, and they can pay you online. Super easy product to use. I think you'll really enjoy it. I'm got a special details about Keep that I'm going to save to the end, but I wanted to go ahead and get back into the meeting here. But I wanted to share that with you. Um, so this is what we're going to be covering today. We're going to be looking at common reasons that small businesses fail, and we're going to go through these. Some of these you may be identify with, some of these you might be struggling with, some of these you might have already overcome, but I want to go through them. And then we're going to look at some very large companies, and we're going to look at how they struggled and how they have actually come back. And if there's lessons to be learned there, we're going to look at those lessons, and we're going to see how we can apply those lessons to you. Something I told my daughter when she was getting ready to go to work, or she was working when she first really started getting into the work field. Shortly after high school, she started taking on different jobs. And I told her, I said, it doesn't matter what size company you work with, you're going to realize that all companies struggle with the same problems. A lot of them are disorganized, and you're going to see that firsthand. So don't be amazed if you're working for a small mom and pop company and they're struggling being organized, and then you get a job with a larger company. You're going to see that they all have initially the same problems. And she came back to me after she worked at a couple of different businesses part-time, and she said, you were right. I thought that, the bigger the business, the more organized, the better run they were going to be. And she goes, sometimes the mom and pop that I was working for, the nonprofit I was working for, they seem to have a better handle on being organized than this larger company that I'm now working for. And so, that's why we're going to look at why large multi-billion dollar companies have struggled and what they have learned. So here are some hard facts of just being a small business. 82% of small businesses fail because of cash flow. Now, I listed there that I ran an ad agency for 15 years. And I was very blessed when I ran that agency because I dealt with hundreds of thousands. And one year I almost hit $1 million. It was just a godsend. But at any given time, I had people owing me hundreds of thousands of dollars, which meant I owed hundreds of thousands of dollars to publications. I was an ad agency. I bought radio, TV, and print advertising all over the country for the record labels. And the record labels took about 90 days to pay me. um, you know, and I had to get these radio stations and TV stations and newspapers to understand I'm going to pay my bills, but in some cases, it might take me 90 days to pay you. And in most cases, as the companies worked with me and saw that I was going to pay them and always pay them and make good, um, they were willing to work with me. I talked with my salespeople and I said, hey, when do you lose your commission? And most of them said after 90 days. And I told them up front, I will never cause you to lose a commission. I will always pay you. I want you to reap the reward of working with me. And they went to bat for me. That if something was getting tight, they were telling their sales manager, hey, don't worry, he's good for it. And I never once in that 15 years did a salesperson ever lose their commission from me. And if they went to another publication or they went to a TV station or radio station, they were always willing to work with me and tell their manager, hey, I've worked with this guy for 10 years. He's good for what he says he's going to do. And when you have the potential of owing hundreds of thousands of dollars in any given month, um, you know, that can be very daunting. Um, but luckily, because I was working with these large labels. I knew they were good for the money. Sometimes it was a struggle to get it from them, but I didn't really have cash flow issues. So that was a blessing. But I've worked with businesses now that struggle with cash flow issues, and it can be a problem. So if you're dealing with cash flow issues, I totally get it. Um, think that you can do everything on your own. I thought that for a while, running my first business, and I realized as more and more business kept coming in, I was going to have to get help. I was going to have to get help with my bookkeeping. I was going to have to get help with my um, production of the ads, whether they were video. I was going to have to find a source to get video ads done. I was going to have to get a graphic artist involved. And I ended up hiring a great lady to help me with my regular ads each week. She did great job of graphic art, creating the ads for me each week. And then I had several large projects that happened monthly. And I had a gentleman that I had work exclusively on those. He was a fantastic graphic artist, and he was able to design full page, multi-artist ads for me. And I was able to then start being able to work my clients and make sure that they weren't forgetting about me, staying in touch with them so that the business kept coming in. That was one thing that I was blessed with, was that business kept flowing in um, while I had that company. At the top, the other top reason small businesses fail, you know, they start with too little money, too little money to start with. They underestimate how much it's going to take to run their business on a month-to-month basis. They lack a well-developed business plan. And that was something that when I started contacting the labels and said, hey, I've got this plan for you guys, I would like to come talk to you. I had been in the business for over 15 years before I started my marketing agency. And they said, hey, we don't care if you come talk to us. We just want you to have it in writing. And I said, hey, no problem. I'll bring handouts. I'm going to make my presentation. I'm going to make it very clear to you how I work and what I do. And I sat down and I mapped the whole thing out. Actually, before I even talked to them, I had the whole thing mapped out. And so when I had that first, talk with them, and they said, oh, you need to bring everything in writing. I said, no problem. I already had done that. And they were first of all very impressed with that. And when I came in and made my presentation to them, they basically said, why wouldn't we use you? If you're going to save us money, you're going to do this and do that. They said, we have no idea how you're going to make money. But if you can do everything that you say you're going to do, then we want to use you. And that's why the company was so successful. I didn't have to worry about pricing things properly in my first business, but in my second business now, that has been probably the hardest thing for me. The complete hardest thing for me is pricing things properly. In my first business, I went out and negotiated the cost of quarter page ads, half page ads, full page ads. I negotiated the cost of 30-second TV ads and 60-second radio ads as best I could. A lot of that was driven by the publication or the radio or TV station. But I always worked to try to get the best price. And it was up to the labels as to whether or not I had done a good job getting the price, if they could afford to buy that radio station or buy that TV station's ads. But I had a complete price list up online. They could see all my pricing, and they would place ads based upon the pricing that I got, which in most cases was the best pricing in the market. So that wasn't crucial for me in the first business. Like I say, in my second business, it's easy to underestimate not only your worth, but also the time it's going to take to get a project done. And that's my new business, doing people's social media and creating newsletters and helping people stay organized. That at first I underestimated especially doing video production and things like that, that I also have built in my company for social media, I underestimated how long it would take me to do some of my first video projects. And I way undervalued my work. And over the past, over the first couple of years, I struggled really with how much to price things at. I started looking at competition and seeing what competition was pricing things at. And I started realizing, hey, I'm very fairly priced now. I'm able to make a living. My pricing is good. It's very competitive. And I do a lot of really good work for my clients. So I don't feel bad about asking for top dollar when I go in to speak to clients. 73% are overly optimistic about the revenue they were going to achieve. And I'll have to say, in this second business that I have, the Social Glue, it has been a challenge. I thought it would be up and running. I thought people were going to jump all over social media. People would, I just saw the need for all of this. And I thought people would see the need for it also. And many people do. They're just not willing to pay for it. So it's been a struggle for me. No lie. But now that I've been doing it for some time, I know who my audience is, and I know who I need to get to be my client. And that has made a big difference. Knowing who my best customer is going to be and my ideal customer has made all the difference in the world. They don't recognize their own weaknesses. Some people may think they can take on everything, and they don't realize that they really need help in certain areas. And that's true with all businesses, and you're going to see that here coming up. They don't understand the market and their customers, and that's a pretty big thing. You've got to know your market. You need to do your research on what you're getting into. I knew my market so well in my first business, um, the the ad agency that I had with the record labels, because I had been in the business for 15 years. And a good bit of that time I had spent placing ads for the record labels through another company. And so I knew my market and I knew my customers inside and out. I also knew what competition I had. Why small businesses fail? They don't have a clearly defined pricing strategy. And I'd have to say that is probably one of the biggest things. And like I say, in my second business, that's what I had struggled with for really a couple of years. They don't know how to plan financing needs. I would say you need to find, in some cases, a really good banker that's willing to sit down and help you, not just one of these bankers in a box type of things, where oh yeah, we can help you, and all they want you to do is open a checking account, a business checking account with them. You need to find a real banker, somebody who is going to help you. And I'd love to talk to you if you're in the Atlanta area. I know some great people that are excellent bankers and will take the time to sit down with you. They, yes, they want you to open an account with them, but no, that's not their main purpose. Their main purpose is to see your business thrive. They don't accept or react to competition, technology, or other marketing changes. And that was one of the things that I had to deal with my first business. Things were changing in the music industry. For years and years, I had it set up, where my business was just flowing in like crazy. I I was almost having to turn business down. I was so busy. And then a thing called iTunes came around. And the people that I worked with, the record stores I worked with, that I ran the ads for these record stores for the major labels to help promote these record stores and different events that were happening at the record stores with artists coming into town and things like that. The record stores were like, oh, iTunes, no big deal. Who cares if they buy one song at a time? What they didn't realize was After iTunes sold a bunch of one songs at a time, they started offering their customers, hey, if you bought 3 or 4 songs, we'll give you that credit towards the purchase of the CD. So customers would go like, hey, I've bought 3 or 4 songs. Wow, I might as well get the whole CD. I'm going to save $4 or $5 when I buy the CD because I've already purchased the songs. And that's what they were doing. So all of a sudden, they started losing CD sales. Thousands of record stores went out of business around the country. That directly affected my ad agency because I had less stores to run ads with. And so it affected me big time. And I did everything I could do to help the record stores realize what was going on, you know, and they were just so slow to react that I had to look at something new. And that's when I started looking at social media, email marketing, because I saw that could help record stores, but I saw that it could help everybody too. And I decided I was no longer just going to be stuck in this one industry, which was the music industry, sadly, which was slowly being eaten up by iTunes. So, grow too fast and can't manage it. I was almost there with um, with what I was doing with my first company, um, but luckily I saw these things and I saw my business growing, and I did the proper things to bring in new people that could help me, and that could help me with really large projects, and that could help me with my weekly ad flow. And so I was very lucky there. Um, but sometimes growing too fast can be an issue. I knew some record stores that grew too fast, and they didn't train their salespeople and their employees very well. And so their first store did tremendous and had just unbelievable growth. Their second store struggled a little bit, but they finally got it under control. They opened a third store, and it just started pulling all the other stores down. And that can happen. So you have to be very, very careful about growing too fast. It's actually better to grow at a steady rate than to have all these big spurts that can affect your growth, and to have like one really big growth spurt that can then destroy your business. Because you think about it, if you get a really big customer and then you lose that really big customer, that can be devastating to your business. How do larger businesses do it? And as I told you earlier, a lot of the larger businesses, they don't do it much better than the small businesses. And we're going to see some examples of that. You look at Apple. Most of you guys that are possibly watching this don't remember that Apple was in a big mess. In the 80s, they were losing $1 billion a year. Think about that. They are one of the most capital rich companies, or cash rich companies there is right now. They've got billions of dollars in cash available to them at any given time. But in the 80s, they were struggling. And why was that? It was because they forced Steve Jobs out. He was one of the creators of Apple, and they forced him out in the 80s because they thought that they should be taking on Microsoft head on. They saw Microsoft as their competitor. Steve Jobs never saw Microsoft as their competitor. Microsoft was a software company. Steve Jobs saw Apple as a hardware company that had great software. So he never considered Microsoft the competition. In 1996, Steve Jobs returned, and he had to go to Microsoft to get $150 million cash infusion into the business to keep Apple running. And Microsoft said, we'll give you the money if you will let us put our Internet Explorer, because they did not have a Safari at that time, on all your Mac products. And Steve Jobs said, fine, for, $150 million, I'll make a deal with the devil. But he never saw Microsoft as the devil. He always thought they were two separate companies, one doing great software, the other one doing, Apple creating great products. And once his vision came back to the company, they started succeeding. They started offering a diversified product line. They started off with, you remember, they had the Mac computer, right? But they really started being successful when they came up with iPods, right? They created iPods, and the iPods were fantastic. The iPods just took off. They flew off the shelves. Then they created new versions of the iPod, right? iPod Touch and things like that, where the screens, you could touch them and do things with them. And then the iPhone, and then the iPad. All of those different product offerings have changed Apple tremendously. Then they came up with the Apple Store, and having that personal touch, where you could go into the Genius Bar and sit down and get stuff fixed on your computer, or learn how to use this new app on your phone, or learn how to use your phone if you'd never used a smartphone before. So it's just an incredible story of how Apple turned things around. Some key takeaways here. They cut costly products and expenses when they were really struggling. They had to cut those costs. They experimented. They created the mouse originally. You may not remember that, but Apple really created the first mouse. And think about how you would use your laptop if you didn't have a mouse. It would take you much longer to either use your laptop or your desktop computer. They really changed things there. They experimented. They broke ground on so many new ideas. They evaluated and adapted poorly performing offerings, one of which was some of their computers. They weren't doing what they felt they should do, and they adapted to that. They considered additional offerings like the iPod, like the iPhone, the iPad, and now all the varieties of iPhones and iPads that they have, and then of course the store. Starbucks, another company, you may not have realized this, but Starbucks at one time was in financial trouble. They were one of these companies that grew way too fast. They opened up so many of them. In some cases, you might think they still have way too many locations, but they grew way too fast. They ended up closing 977 stores and had to cut over 8,000 jobs. And that had to be devastating to the company. And part of this came to, once again, the person who had the vision, like a Steve Jobs. They lost their CEO, the founder of the company. He basically built the company up to a point. He felt it could run on his own, and he left. Sadly, the people that took over the business didn't have the same vision and insight, with the company, and so they struggled. So they came up with the idea of taking suggestions from employees, listening to their employees. What could they do better? The CEO actually came back. The original founder actually came back and came up with these ideas. We gotta get back to the basics. We used to have great customer service. So let's talk to our employees. How can we bring that customer service back? They closed all their stores to retrain their staff. Think about that. They closed all their stores. So for a while, all Starbucks were closed. And then they retrained their staff and they decided to increase their focus on social ads because it was very affordable. And because of all of this, we've got some key takeaways. They revived their corporate purpose. Like I say, they lost their focus. When he left, they lost their focus. And in order to fix that, he had to come back and infuse his original vision and their new suggestions and revive that corporate focus. They had to innovate. They had to do things that they had never done before. There are some Starbucks here in Atlanta after 4 o'clock. They serve wine. They have a happy hour. So that's probably something you're going to start seeing at more and more Starbucks. They listen to their employees and their customers. Want to get into Best Buy? This is a company I worked with in the music industry. And I saw how this company did things. Some of it was very smart, some of it was very clever. I didn't like a lot of what they did because they hurt the mom and pop record stores that I dealt with. One of their philosophies was when they opened a new Best Buy, one of the biggest draws of Best Buy was their music department. Their music department was outstanding. You could find anything and everything in a Best Buy music department when they first opened. And that was their sneaky trick. You could walk in there and you would see music that you hadn't seen, you had forgotten about. And you would go like, oh, wow, I gotta have this. I haven't seen this since I was a kid. Or I didn't even know they made this anymore. And you would see stuff that you just wouldn't believe you were seeing. That was their biggest trick, to bring people in. And over the next year, all that product slowly disappeared. And all they had in there was their top selling product, Billboard's top sellers. That's all they had in there after about a year, year and a half. The other thing, and the way this affected the stores that I dealt with, I had a gentleman, he had 3 locations. They all ended up being directly across from Best Buy's. It killed him. And he was convinced that he could outlast them because he knew how they operated, that they brought this music in. The thing he didn't count on was the consumers. The consumers, even though Best Buy's, um, library of products shrunk tremendously to where they weren't carrying everything like they were. The consumers still had it in their head that they had everything. So they would go in looking for it. And when they didn't find it, they wouldn't just leave. They would ask the people in the store, hey, can you get this for me? And they would say, yeah, we'll have that in here in a couple of days for you. And that's how Best Buy really took off at first. People were coming in for the music. Of course, they had a fantastic electronic selection and all the other stuff, but it devastated clients in the music business because they were using music as a loss leader. So in 2012, they were almost nearly bankrupt. They had to close their lowest performing stores in order to survive, which makes sense. And they had to streamline disorganized stores. If you ever went into Best Buy in those 2011, 2012 years and you tried to ask for help or something like that, it was hard to find. Most people didn't even, their employees were just so unorganized. They couldn't really help you. They had to create new customer-centric services, and that's really what they've done. When you go in there now, you find much better help. And one of the things you might find online, some really good help, because they integrated online and in-store experience. In other words, you can order online. Yeah, you can have it shipped to your house, but you don't have to pay shipping if you pick it up at the store. And so they'll notify you when it's in, or in some cases, in a couple of hours, you might get a notice your item is ready to be picked up. So they really turned that around. They also made some of their stores much smaller because they didn't need all the space that they needed before. They really thought through their stores in a much, much better way. So some takeaways here with Best Buy. They evolved with a changing market. As things started to go online and they started being hammered, they were like, oh, are we just going to become an online store? No, we're a brick and mortar location. We need to adapt to that, but we also need to adapt to online purchasing. They invested in their client experience. The fact that a a person could go online, place an order, come in and pick it up. Super easy, super simple. They've already paid for it. They're ready to walk right out the door with it. They were able to reduce costs with minimal negative customer impact. Um, you know, they've always been one of these, kind of you almost think of them as a discount, you know, store, but they're not really. They sell good quality merchandise almost at list price most of the time. You go in to buy a computer, unless they're having a major sale on something, it's going to be pretty much the same price you can get it anywhere. The thing is, you can walk in, you can see it, you can touch it there, and then if you want, you can go back and order it online if you want to. But a lot of times, sometimes I found the in-store pricing can sometimes be a little bit better than the online pricing. But you've got that option either way. So some of the things we talked about today, we went through and we talked about a lot of things that small businesses suffer with. And, we've got to keep focus. We've got to keep focus on those things, because whether it's money that's tight, whether you're growing too fast, whether you don't really understand who your best client is, all of these things can really make a big difference in the way your business grows. So I want to thank you for attending this webinar today. I've got a special offer that I'm going to email you, so I want you to be looking out for that. It's a great offer. I think you're going to love it. But I'm going to email it to you in the next probably 48 hours. And next Thursday at 11:30 a.m., we're going to have part 2 of this presentation. And part 2, we're going to take action in your business. We're going to talk about how you can take action in your business to fix things that you might be struggling with right now as a business owner. We've already looked at some of the things that large businesses have done. Many of those same things you can put to work in your business. And that's why I wanted to show you, no matter how big these businesses are, they have a lot of the same issues that you have. And next week, we're going to look at that more in detail. So thanks for joining me on today's webinar. And I look forward to part 2 next week on Thursday, 11:30 a.m. We're going to kick it off, and we're going to be talking about how to take action in your business. And I look forward to seeing you then.